Warning, this episode contains strong language.
Listen, it's funny. If somebody is against the president, and then it kind of is like icing on top of the cake. I don't agree with anything that he's doing. And by the way, he seems to be a jerk. I totally get that. And there will always be a part. I'm talking really about people who favor him. They love the agenda, but they're conflicted by this other stuff.
Sure. I know a lot of people like that.
Get over it. It doesn't matter. However, again, it's the agenda that matters. But another bit of human nature is if you take a politician who has some personal quirks, maybe even some personal problems, the people who support that politician will always be in the mood to overlook those things. And the people who don't support that politician will always be in the mood to weaponize those things. And that's true. That'll always be true traveling in both directions.
Welcome to the Lone Star Play Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Join me and a famous guest every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We discuss their career, life, food, Texas, and everything in between. Let's get started. Another episode of the Lone Star Plate Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. All right, our guest today is Mark Davis. I had an amazing conversation with Mark. Mark is a conservative radio host out of North Texas on 660 AM. Okay, The Answer. He's also got a column in the Dallas Morning News. Yeah, he's also got a podcast where they take the show and they put it as a podcast too, the Mark Davis Show. So really, really cool. Really great guy. And again, not somebody I really agree with on a lot of different points, but somebody that I can have an open, honest conversation with. And I loved that. Mark was so cool to talk to. I just really enjoyed him. He's got a lot to say about radio too. We had a great conversation about radio, where it's been, how the changes, the medium, the formats of how content is provided to people. We talk about Netflix and how series are released, right? Binge watching or episodic. And it was just such a great conversation with him. And of course, because he's a political commentator, we got into politics. And like I said, I don't really agree with him on everything, but, we had a great conversation. How crazy is that? Why? Because we're respectful of each other. I hear him out. He hears me out. And it's interesting to hear where people think the way they think, why they got there. And you know what? You never know. You may learn something and may change your mind on a few things. And vice versa. Hopefully that happens. That's a good conversation. You learn something from somebody and they learn something from you. So, and you can always learn something from somebody, no matter who it is. That is the truth. So I really enjoyed having Mark on, and hopefully he will come back on again and we can get to talk some more stuff because, again, it's just an awesome conversation. I can see why he's been so successful. And again, no matter how you feel about Mark or where he stands, he's a respectful guy, and I got to give him that. And again, just really enjoyed our conversation. So it was really cool. So hope to have him back on and we can talk more politics. Or just anything that's going on. Really politics. Really enjoyed talking politics with him. So again, check out Mark's shows. Check out his column. Check out this podcast, right? That's the point. You can hear this. You can hear our conversation. And it's awesome. It flew by, to be honest with you. We kind of talk about that in the podcast. The hour and 15 or hour and 20 minutes just flew by. So sit back, relax. Go get a nice coffee, maybe, roll up a cigarette if that's what you do, or get a cigar. Just enjoy this podcast because it's one of those type of podcasts. Maybe just a little whiskey, a little something. It's a really good one. So without further ado, there is further ado because I have to remind you to check out our website, okay, thelonestarplay.com, where you can find out all the other information about us. And as well, don't forget our YouTube channel, where this episode is broken down into little clips, digestible, because again, we filmed this so you can see my beautiful face, Mark's beautiful face. Okay, you're talking to two guys who were made for radio, doing video, okay? We're gorgeous. We're two gorgeous dudes, so you're going to want to check it out. So go check that out. And then, of course, just listen to this podcast if you just want to listen to it. So let's just get to it, right, guys? Let's get to this. Mr. Mark Davis, enjoy. Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. I love this background here. Bam. That is like, I wanted to be in radio myself. I went to a school in Arlington. I'm not even sure if it's still around. It's called American Broadcasting School. Yes, have you ever heard of that?
Right off 360. I've spoken to them sometimes.
Oh, right on. Yeah. I was, let's see, 2001, actually, because I was in school when 9/11 happened, and that was like major. I was driving down 360, literally on my way to school. We get there, they have the TV in the classroom there, and we're all just watching it. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. But yeah, radio was really just what I wanted to do. And it was odd because it was at that weird transition, and the teachers were talking about it, about how things were changing, things were becoming more automated. It was just this, and they were teaching us that, because the internet was just coming around. In fact, our station, our call letter, everything was internet based. So you had to listen to the station online. It was just very new and whatever. And yeah, it was just really exciting, to be honest with you. And you've been in radio.
Is cool. Well, that is awesome. And it's funny because the podcasting world is the new Wild West frontier, where somebody that wants to have a show can have a show, and then it's just out there. And if it's good, people will flock to it. And that's the way to make a living at it, or do whatever you want to do. All right. For this thing, will there be a video component to this, or just audio?
Both. We do both.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We put it on like YouTube. I would say 95% of our listeners not viewing it, but there's still that few that watch it and watch the clips and that whatnot.
Very cool. Yeah. Very good.
And that's another thing that's different about radio, right? Like radio who was the first person to put radio as television? Was it Howard Stern? Was he the first one to like really?
When the E network started doing the Stern Show in the mid 90s, it absolutely was. It was revolutionary because people said that it had to be either all one thing or all the other, that radio was its own destination. You didn't need to muck up the works or confuse people by bringing TV cameras in. And if it's a TV show, it needs to be totally devoted to the trappings of television. And as with 100 other things, Howard proved that was not necessarily the case.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, what an interesting, because what made it interesting was the fly on the wall component to the camera angle. Right. It was like, they're not pieced to cameras. We're not doing a show. I love it. And now you're right. Now look at what it is. It's what everybody does.
And now we all do it. Exactly right. Because I don't have a daily camera in here. And I kind of thank God for that, because I just don't need to play to a camera every day. I've done this for a long time. But when I do fill-ins for the Salem Radio Network, they have a video component to everything. So I run here's the camera.
Yeah.
I set the thing up and just point it at me, and then it's people can watch it as well as listen to it, because that's just what everybody needs to do these days, they say. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just an interesting time with the way all the mediums are and how it gets to people. Right now, there's just so many different streams to get information, and if you have a show or whatever, a production, you're thinking of all the different ways you can get it out on different platforms as well, when Absolutely. It used to be very uniformed and singular almost to some extent. So I find it fascinating, but also overwhelming to some extent.
Those are not mutually exclusive. So exactly right. So, cool.
Yeah.
Well, good. What describe what you envision here today?
This is it. Just us talking. We just have conversations. This is the podcast right here. I do a little editing to the show, just sort of taking out, nulls in the show, things like that.
Great.
But other than that,
I'll go wherever you seek to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if you ever listened to Joe Rogan at all.
Sure.
Boom. There you go. It's just 3, 2, 1, go. That's it. We already started, Mark.
That's the best. That's exactly right. If you're asking what we're doing, guess what? We've been doing it for 10 minutes, which is exactly the natural, unaffected way to do it. Because there's a theory that says something is affected by the fact that people know that they're being observed, by the knowledge that people know that the process of a conversation is under scrutiny, it changes the nature of the conversation. I think that's unavoidably true. And the best way to do that as either host or guest is to plow through that and be as unaffected and as organically natural as you can.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my God. I'm going to learn so much today, Mark. This is like, well, let's excited.
Let's not go nuts. Don't oversell.
No, you're selling yourself short, man. No. Yeah, for sure. To be honest with you, I would say half my guests will be halfway through the interview and they go, "Have we started yet? Did we?"
That's a compliment. That's
really?
a compliment. That's how you know that's how you know the previous 30 minutes have been wonderful.
Right on. I wondered about that. I'm not gonna lie. I really wondered about, man, am I I just thought this is how I do it. I don't want to change it. So I'm just gonna go with it. But okay, that's good to hear from you, to be honest with you.
Have you ever gotten 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, and someone didn't know that they were underway? And they go, "Oh, dang, can I revise something I said 7 or 8 minutes ago? Because that was totally not for public consumption."
That hasn't happened yet, to be frank. So I'm glad. I'm waiting for it. Probably me. That would be me if I was a guest on a show. I'd be like, whoa, okay, hang on here. Let's go back. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you, Mark, about you do so many things. Okay, I'm looking at you. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a Renaissance man. He's all over the place. He's got a radio show. You got a column in the Dallas Morning News. You got a podcast as well. I'm looking that up too. So you got all these things. How it all works. How do you handle all of this stuff, Mark?
Well, you're very kind to mention all of them. And the answer is they all run on parallel tracks. The biggest and most significant track is the radio show, the studio I'm sitting in right now, every morning, 7 to 10 Central. Here on the Salem Media Group at 6:60 a.m. The Answer in Dallas, Fort Worth. That's the radio show. It's 3 hours of me doing things that are hopefully entertaining, hopefully enlightening. If I'm having a good time, I figure everybody else is too. So that's the idea, is to have everybody come to the show and be glad they were here, either because they learned something or got to call and get something off their chest or whatever. So that's the engine that drives virtually everything else. For just about as long as I've done radio, I've done some form of writing in the various cities. I've managed to stumble across a column in the case of here in DFW. I came back to my native Texas in 1994. And a couple of years after that, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram called and asked if I'd like to do a column. They had Molly Ivins and Bob Ray Sanders, these iconic liberal columnists who did just a wonderful job. And I guess they sat around one day and said, "Can we find a conservative?" And so they did. And I wrote for them from 1996 until about 2004. That's when the Dallas Morning News got in touch, and that's an offer you can't refuse. So I've written for them ever since. And in terms of the writing element of it, since coming through the door here at Salem, I now write for Town Hall. And just in the last couple of weeks, I'm doing a column for Newsweek. So that's kind of cool. So wow. The writing, I mean, everything that's in my head, everything that I do, all these opinions that are, knocking around in my brain, the opinions I hear, opinions I express, those all lend themselves pretty easily to turning around after a given morning show and firing off a column about something that very afternoon. So it all sort of lends to the same. As far as the podcast, it's funny. The podcast that you do is sitting down and preparing it from square one and doing it. The Mark Davis Show podcast is basically the broadcast of the show. I have a wonderful producer, Rhonda Moreland, who puts up everyday show. So right now, somebody can go to 660amtheanswer.com, hear yesterday's show, hear a show from 2 weeks ago, see what it was like when we were reacting to the COVID back in March, or see what I was saying about the election a month ago, or whatever. So it's basically just a telescoped, easier to consume version of the show. The show is the center of the universe. Everything else orbits around that.
Well, I like that. No, it's smart. That's definitely smart. It's good about the columns. I like how you just take the momentum from the show and then use that to go into your column. That's just smart. What I love about taking the show, putting it to have this back catalog, that used to be the exciting part of radio, but also the frustrating part of radio is that you would hear dang it, I'll never hear that again, right? You couldn't go back to it. But at the same time, if you were there in the moment and got to hear it, that was exciting because you knew this is only happening right now. So how do you feel about this back catalog? Do you like this new system? Do you wish it was more the old? I'm curious how you feel about that change.
The short answer is I love it because I love the accountability. First of all, if somebody says, "Yeah, Mark, I heard you say something about a month ago," I go, "Oh, really?" Then we go revisit and say, "Hey, guess what? Sometimes they're right. Whoops, hey, I mean, I was in the room. I lived it, and sometimes it's useful and educational to go back and hear prior shows. The ability to do more for listeners, the ability to offer more to the public is great. But you've really touched on two things that are very interesting. Number one is the nature of how we consume everything. If your big headings are print, television, and radio, print, the word is there forever on a printed page, and now on an online page, the words are there. You can go find them forever. That's just understood. TV used to be there. The pictures move, but they would be there and it would be gone. Now your TV shows wait for you. Something's on at 8:00 tonight. You're at dinner. No problem. Fire up the DVR and there you are. Now radio is exactly the same thing. Radio has the ability to offer people past shows to later in the day, go back and listen. There's sort of a DVR version of radio where if you're listening to me, you can pause, go back 15, 30 seconds. It's crazy the latitude that is being presented to listeners now. Now, the second fascinating element of keeping track of that technology is it has given the listenership, the consumer, an enormous sense of empowerment and in pardon the way this sounds, in some cases entitlement, because if they know that all these stations are putting stuff out there, I'll get calls from people and they'll say, "Yeah, Mark, you played something 3-4 days ago. Can you put that on the website or can you play that again or something?" And I better doggone well do it because it's part of customer service, and I'm glad to do it, and I'm glad that I have an accommodating spirit in that regard, because it used to be come in, sit down, do a radio show, and you were done. There's that show. It's out there in the ether. Next one tomorrow. That's it. Now, any show you do creates 10 or 15 other chores you may then be asked to pursue. And so you better love it. You better have a heart for it. You better enjoy it. And the good news is that I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's interesting. So it just like multiplies workload, but in a good way, right? Because there are benefits to that. You gain also from it. So it's a give and take as far as that goes. Yeah. I was having a discussion with somebody about an actor, actually, Jim Beaver, who is on Supernatural. Have you ever seen that show? He's also on in The Boys, that show that's on Amazon Prime. He plays like a general, I think, in the show. Anyway, we were talking about the way that shows come out now, right? The Netflix model of let's put out the whole season of this show versus we're going to release episode per episode, because when the first season of The Boys came out, just like Netflix model, boom, all of the whole season. Well, with the second season, they did something different. They decided we're going to release the first 3 episodes and then release weekly on Friday a new episode. And it was just a fascinating discussion because he has so many, give and takes about it. It's like, well, yes, you are a part of the water cooler conversation now during the week, right? We can talk about the episode, Monday through Friday or whatever with coworkers and whatever, and anticipate the show coming up the following Friday. The flip side to that is the reason why they went to the Netflix model, which is sort of the idea of, it's kind of goes in line with what you said a little bit. Like I get the power now of when I'm going to watch this and when I'm going to do it. So I can fit it into my schedule. Look, I've got soccer stuff happening Friday with my kids. I got this. I can't do, I want to watch it all when I have the time. So I see the give and take. It's interesting.
There is an argument to be made for both ways of conducting television life or the release of anything. The old guy in me, the nostalgia in me, misses when we'd all show up at work and we know that we all saw the previous night's All in the Family. We know we all saw the previous night's Hill Street Blues because that's where it was and that's where you had to go to see it. And it was a more communal experience. now if something is dumped on Netflix, 10 episodes, well, maybe you're binging and maybe you're not. It may take you forever to get through The Crown or Game of Thrones or whatever. How far into you? Episode 7. Episode 7. What's the matter with you? I'm on episode 43. And it's a more disjointed kind of thing. But I have my own sense of entitlement as a consumer because now I've grown used to, I was kind of a latecomer to The Crown. So my wife and I did all the seasons of The Crown in like 3 weeks. And now we're just ready for season 4. Let's get it's days away. So here we go. And it is completely under our control. We can watch one episode tonight if we want to, or tomorrow's Saturday. Let's knock down 5 or 6. Come on, let's go. Fire up. Let's go. And so when something comes out, there are two shows that I've really enjoyed, am enjoying and did enjoy. Let's see. Well, Apple Plus is where we got the wonderful Jason Sudeikis in Ted Lasso, an American football coach who goes out and coaches British soccer. And they were releasing those week after week after week. So I got into this, got hooked like a trout as of like episode 3. And then I was ready to go to episode 4. It's like, excuse me, what? That doesn't come out till next week. And it took me 6 weeks to see the next 6 episodes. And I was not happy about it. I mean, I'm having fun here.
Of course.
It was odd. It was like, well, okay, I guess we can't go to the next one. And the other one is in progress right now. The remake, this is on Disney Plus, of The Right Stuff, a wonderful Tom Wolfe book, and an incredible movie from 1983 about the Mercury astronauts, the earliest history of America in space. And they're doing those. I like a couple at a time. They did release 2, and then that's like 1 a week. So I'm wondering if, and this may differ from show to show and from person to person, which is the better way to consume art? Is it more effective? Is it more impactful? If you can sit there and knock out 8 hours of a show and just let it flow like some marathon movie? Or is it better if it's like delayed gratification, where it's like, here's a snippet, wait, think about it, let it ruminate, because what you don't get is the ability to take a week and talk about what you just saw. Because if you just saw something, you got to turn it around and here's the next episode. So, hey, if we were at my house, you'd be hearing 3 dogs. So
you hear that? Yeah. It's like, oh my God.
Nothing helps the sound of a, and whom are we hearing there? Who would that have been?
My 2 dogs, Mac and Rocket, they come on the show every once in a while. They'll jump in on the podcast,
Well, they just did.
Yeah, they just did.
and what are they visually? What are they?
They're one's a little black Spanish greyhound that I brought from Spain when I used to live in Spain, and yeah, he's awesome, a little rescue dog. And then the other one I got in Dallas when I lived in Dallas from the SPCA.
Good for you. Good.
They're fine.
You.
They're just barking at the door here. Yeah.
Sound of dogs and sound of kids. Nothing wrong with it.
Hang on, let me just tell them
no problem.
Rocket, para ya. They understand only Spanish commands.
Oh, sure they do.
So
go with that. Listen, they're used to whatever you do. I mean, if you hit them with Mandarin Chinese, that's what they're going to respond to.
Exactly. I think it's funny when I speak Spanish to a dog, they'll be like, they understand Spanish. I'm like, well, whatever language you train them in is what they're going to learn. It's like, they don't all understand English across the world. I promise you that is not how it works.
It is one world.
Yeah, it's one world. So getting back to that. Yeah, very fascinating. Also, like, did you hear about Quickbee going down, right? So this whole of how to take in content, just like you're saying. I mean, it's just like you're saying, I think it has to do with this. Honestly, I think every show is different. I think every show lends itself to a different format of how to be absorbed. That's just different. How are the showrunners creating each episode? Are they connected? Is it a 10 episode arc? Are they episodic where I can just, absorb one after the other? Maybe there's an underlying narrative that does carry through other episodes, but I think it just depends on the show. To say that, but I understand like your frustration with the Ted Lasso thing, because I have that same frustration with shows where I'm into it and then like I have to wait so long, I forget about it. And then
they make us wait. And I wonder about you're talking about showrunners, writers, creators. They clearly know what they are. Well, one presumes they know that they're going to do a show on Apple Plus and it's going to come out once a week, or they know it's going to be on Netflix and it's going to be instant dump and everybody can watch the whole thing in one weekend if they want to. How does that change the writing? How does that change the story arc? Are you less, for example, less likely to end every episode with some kind of cliffhanger if you know people are just going to blast through episodes 1, 2, 3, 4? You don't necessarily have to have some aha moment at the end of every episode. Whereas if somebody's going to be waiting around for a week, you need to have something at the end of episode 3 that they're going to remember so that they come back for episode 4 7 days from now. There may be, it may affect the creative process. And I wonder if, as a writer, I mean, you're going to cash the check from wherever it comes and be very happy for it. Would one rather write for something that is linear, that's going to just dump and let people, or would one prefer, is it more of a creative challenge to write something that's going to be more staccato? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. It's a great point. Again, I think it's, this is what I love about something that's not on CBS, or the way that the commercials are taken out, right? So the writing changes, right? When you don't have to write for the commercial breaks. That I love. That I'm happy when I see shows don't have the commercial breaks and they're writing in a much different way. I lived in Europe for a few years, and when you see television programming over there, it is so different. Not just, of course, they're speaking a different language or whatever, but the way they tell stories is different. So I love that. And I love that, they'll use it a different way, but not to say it's better or it's just different. So I liked that this system came in where we started to get rid of the commercials, and it just gave this free blank canvas to creators to, okay, I'm going to create this story without the limit of, okay, at minute 7, I have to make sure we do this cool dun dun dun, before we talk about Tylenol for 3 minutes. It's like
and even if you're whipping through the commercials, or you're watching something that's on some network on demand, or you're watching something on iTunes, or et cetera, that was a network TV show, so you're whipping through, you don't have the commercials, it still stops for them. It is still written as though they were there. And it makes it kind of go and then go and then go and then go. I mean, of course, that's been TV since the birth of TV,
100%.
Almost a century ago. So it's not like that was horribly problematic during the run of some of the best shows in TV history. But now to be unfettered by that probably is a creative plus.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, hang on one second. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No problem at all.
There's a cat snuck into my backyard, and he's hanging right by my pond, staring at them. That is, I have koi fish in my pond. I've actually never seen a cat come to my backyard like that, because my dogs are trained to roam the perimeter, if you will. So that's hilarious. I'm so sorry, Mark. I apologize.
Clearly they're doing a good job of security.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. If you walk or crawl or breathe or fly anywhere in my backyard, you're not coming out alive. That's
just so they know.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, look, that's the perils of home studio life because of the pandemic here. I can't wait to get back to the real studio, to be honest with you. Although I'm getting more comfortable with my setup here. I took a long time to get it ready. So now I'm like, well, but I don't want to leave it now.
Well, it looks great. And then you get into the entire nature of the dominant storyline in all of our lives. And that is 7 straight months of this. Nobody, I presume, thought that it was going to last this long. Yeah. We have coped, if that's what it's called. We have adjusted. We have endured. And I think everybody has a list in this COVID era of things that still suck, that are terrible, that they're really getting tired of. Things that they are slowly finding a way to adjust to and adapt to, and things that, and this is the most important list, things that they might have learned that might be a silver lining. Maybe there are family relationships that are helped. Maybe there are skill sets, hobbies, books read, shows streamed that you would not have had otherwise the chance to do. And I'm looking to get out of this as certainly and as quickly as anybody, but hopefully when this is in our rear view mirror, the positives will have outweighed the negatives.
Love that. Love that you said that, Mark. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good time to take advantage if you can. Spend more time with your family, catch up on things, just yourself, better yourself. Get a little more healthy, eat better, whatever, exercise, whatever you can do to look at yourself in turn. I agree completely. Mark, I don't want to change subjects so dramatically, but screw it. This is a podcast. This is what I do. So the third, you're a political commentator, so we might as well get into a little bit of this. The third, I'm not very political to be honest with you, but I enjoy conversations. So the third debate was last night. I don't know if I'm assuming you watched it for sure, right? Like, you're like, no, I didn't catch it. Yeah.
Now there was football on, man. I don't know. Wow, man, I got to go find a YouTube. Am I embarrassed?
That was funny. Yeah. What did you think of the debate last night?
Okay. The first thing would be, and again, recording this on the Friday morning following the second and final third debate overall, if you throw in the vice presidential one, the comparison one makes is with the first debate, which virtually everyone hated because it was basically President Trump, Vice President Biden just talking all over each other. And, Trump tends to be the alpha male of talking. And so he was just all adrenalined up. And even those of us who are in that support base found ourselves saying, wow, sir, just let the game come to you. let the game come to you. Yeah. And he was so worked up that resulted in Vice President Biden, who tends to be a somewhat more mannerly and measured soul, called him a clown at one point, told him to shut up at one point. So everybody was all hyped up and ticked off, and then throw in some difficulties in gathering control from moderator Chris Wallace, and it was just a first-class cluster. So along comes this debate, the second debate last night, the 22nd, and the anticipation ran high because the debate commission, the first thing they tried to do is they tried to take the second debate and do it virtually, do it like this. And the Trump campaign said, nope, needs to be a real debate, in person, real people. And the eternal question is, did he miss an opportunity there? Should he have done the virtual debate? It's impossible to know. It might have gone well, might not. I think the reason he didn't, the reason he chose not to, is the president, say what you will, you can like this or not like this. He's about real events in person with real people, whether it's 10,000 of them on a tarmac or one other guy on a debate stage. So be that as it may, we wound up with one more debate. That was last night, Kristen Welker moderating. And expectations were, first of all, that she'd have to be as argumentative as Chris Wallace was. She wasn't. And the debate commission threw in its interesting wrinkle by saying, all right, tell you what, if the first debate annoyed virtually everyone because of the constant interruptions, we're going to mute the mics or one at a time. So if it's you versus me, it's like, okay, you go first. Here's your 2 minutes uninterrupted. And the reason we know it's going to be uninterrupted is because my mic is turned off. And then vice versa, I get to go for 2 minutes. How do I know I'm uninterrupted? Because your mic is turned off. And I found myself thinking during the week leading up to this, I said, in a weird way, this may help the president. And I think it totally did. It forced him, if you want to say that, into a measured patience that served him well. As for Vice President Biden, and just full disclosure, I'm obviously a conservative here, but I also, for a living, try to objectively assess things as they are pitched to various audiences. Vice President Biden, he has exceeded expectations in both debates because the expectations were so low. He has had the unfortunate nature of media today is that if there is a gaffe, it gets played 75 times. And it's like, that's all you did. So can you find Vice President Biden with the occasional brain fart? Yes, you can. Does it happen every 10 minutes in an average day? Of course not. But those things get replayed. And so when Mr. Biden was on a debate stage for an hour and a half and seemed coherent, it was like, wow, he didn't, blink out. That's great. So last night was probably more about content and less about personality, less about their competing views of the country, more about competing views of the country than about competing style, which was probably helpful to both of them.
Yeah. Well, what a great constructive answer. What did you think about the moderator? You mentioned her a little bit, but I really enjoyed her because I didn't notice her.
Boy, like officials in a sporting event, you've done well if you're just doing what you're supposed to do and you don't become the story.
Yeah.
Chris Wallace was totally the story, and I felt for him because he had two guys just going. "Bah, bah, bah, bah." I mean, what are you supposed to do? I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
herding cats. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Uh, Susan Page Susan Page of USA Today did the vice presidential debate, which was much better behaved because it's Mike Pence and Senator Harris. So, was
Yeah.
not a big, not a big caustic ball of adrenaline. So this time, Kristen Welker had the playing field striped out in a way that made it more conducive to keeping people on a certain track. You got 2 minutes, go. Now you got 2 minutes, go. And even in the midst of some of their back and forth time, she found a way, and it's easier to recognize than it is to describe. She found a way to kind of nudge people like, oh, why do you say that? Or, what did you mean by that? That kind of guided things along in a really palatable, more easily consumable way.
Yeah, I agree. I think another positive thing she did that I didn't catch till about halfway through the interview or the debate, excuse me, that I thought, oh, that's smart. What she would say, she would let everybody respond. Somehow she found a way to let everybody respond back and forth, but still keep it going. She was so good. But what I noticed is she would say, yeah, okay, go ahead and respond. And then we're going to discuss this.
Absolutely.
Right. That was smart. That was really
the genius of that. It seems like it has to be all one or the other when candidates want just a little bit more of back and forth. That tends to be a good thing.
Yeah.
To an extreme, they're just yelling at each other and sniping over each other. That was debate number one. To the other extreme, it's like excessive rigidity on the part of the moderator. If somebody has just 5 or 10 more words, no, we're done here. Stop it. Go. Next person. Go. Then people are left at home going, dude, let him finish his sentence.
Totally.
She found a wonderful balance, essentially saying, okay, 10 or 15 more seconds, but then I'm hopping back in, giving them an envelope of 10 or 15 seconds, not just, go ahead and finish your point, at which point 3 minutes, I'm still talking. But it's like take 10 or 15, giving them a finite envelope so that they knew they better craft together one sentence or two and then be done. Or
I love that. Exactly, because it's what we want. You're right. Exactly what we want is viewers. Let them finish. Exactly. Let them quickly respond to that. I loved it. It was just really good. Again, I think, whatever you can say about Biden or Trump, whichever it is, what as American people, what we actually want to see is a conversation, a debate, not something we can't even absorb, right? Which was the first debate, no matter which side you're on, it wasn't good for anybody. So yes, I think last night was actually a breath of fresh air in the sense that, again, whether or not you agree with Trump or not, at least you got to hear him say his points in a very finally, just something, coherent, just straightforward. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. Biden, same thing. Okay, you got your time. Let's hear it. Yeah, I liked it a lot, to be honest with you, for that sense.
For a historical burst, after the first one, after the interruption fest, people invoked something, and it's spoken of a lot. So what we really should have is maybe just no moderator at all, and just let these guys go at it. And the reference is made to the Lincoln-Douglas debates. Now, those were not presidential. That is when Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas were running for the United States Senate from Illinois in the 1850s. And if you dig deep, and there are transcripts of this, and they are amazingly thoughtful, amazingly deep. And the reason why they're deep is, and they alternated, they went all over the state of Illinois. And let's say in tonight in Springfield, Illinois, Abraham Lincoln goes first. He goes for 30 minutes.
Wow.
Go. Then Mr. Douglas gets 60 minutes. Go. And then Abe comes back for 30 to wrap up. And then tomorrow night, they flip it. Stephen Douglas goes first. So it's 30 of talking, 60 of more talking, and then 30 of some additional talking. That's like with no, because maybe it's just my modern tastes, because surely, and if you go back and look at the transcripts of the Lincoln Douglas debates, they totally address what the other person has said. But by then, who remembers what the other person has said? Maybe that's just today's modern short attention span. And I don't ever want to go back to that, because after it again, in today's fast-paced world, after somebody says something, I'd kind of like go, okay, what does this other guy have to say about that? And then he says something, all right, wait a minute. What does this other guy have to say? In other words, silly me, I kind of want it to be like a talk show. If I ever have a bunch of people in this studio, or a candidate debate in here, which I have sometimes done, we don't do time limits, or an actual official debate has to. But if I've got people with competing views on the show, I just sort of let them go, and then go, okay, and then hand it to the other person when they sort of naturally seem to come to the end of a point. And if one person is way talkier than the other, you got to kind of rein folks in. But I think we've come to a point where we like things that more closely resemble actual conversation. And last night did, certainly more so than the first one.
I mean, yeah, 1,000%. I'm curious. You're conservative. I'm not. I'm just going to assume you're probably supporting Trump. That's fine. I support Biden. Full disclosure. I talk about it on the podcast all the time. I'm curious. What do you think Trump has to do in these last? Gosh, how many days is it? So what, 11 days. 11 days. What do you think Trump has to do in these next 11 days to, get people behind him and get some support for him?
It is obviously, that's the billion-dollar question. And sure. Obviously his campaign, I know what they want to do and what they will do, and then I'll get closer to what I think they ought to do, which is not a wholly different answer. If you're just coming off your first term as president, whether you're Barack Obama, Donald Trump, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, your goal is to have the American people say, yeah, I want more of that. Right? Yeah. And in the case of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and George W. Bush, they succeeded because they won re-election. In the case of Bush 41, didn't happen. Lost to Bill Clinton in 1992. So, why was that? You can go back and find various reasons. If you're not successful in having America want more of you, they are going to change up at that position. So the obvious Trump task is to get more people to the polls who want to continue his presidency than there are people at the polls who want it to stop. There are two ways to do that. Accentuate the positive, as the old 1940s song goes, and talk about the economy, and talk about strong borders, and talk about regulatory reform, and talk about constitutional Supreme Court justices. But you've got to do more than just talk about the things you've done that conservatives like. You have to do that. Obviously, the things that conservatives have liked do involve, right. Judge Barrett and strong borders and tax cuts. But you got to do things, make your point that you've done things that everybody should like. Things like rejuvenating the economy, and that the skill set that enabled me to build the economy as I did pre-COVID is the same skill set that's going to enable me to build it back. I also don't know if there is a stark difference politically in how people feel about shutting down. I think there are liberals who do not want the world shut down as much as maybe a President Biden would. And there might be people who say, I don't know what I think of Trump on A, B, C, or D, but it just seems like a somewhat more optimistic view. And so maybe I want to sign on to that rather than the dark winter that Joe gave us in the imagery of the debate. Conversely, Joe Biden's job is to say, we got to have a change in the White House. And it may well be, and this is the huge X factor, is the whole COVID-19 storyline. If we are COVID free, I don't want to say Trump wins and it is not close, but his win would be virtually definite, because the only real differences are the usual differences between Republicans and Democrats. And what would settle the score are probably the things that helped him win in the first place. And that's independents and moderates, all of the things being equal with a booming economy. James Carville said it best, it's the economy, stupid. And that often is. It's like, they might not love Trump, but they love their job. They love their 401k. His win would be all but certain without COVID. Throw in COVID. And is it possible that people are sufficiently dispirited, sufficiently frustrated that we haven't solved this yet, and they think it's his fault. Joe wants people to think that it's his fault. That they think I hate this. America is not as it should be. I'm frustrated by that. Let's give this other guy a shot. See if he can do better. I guarantee you, I just described millions of voters.
That's me. I'm one of those people.
If it's 20 million voters, then Biden wins. If it's 1 or 2 million, then the president probably wins, even with the polls showing a national lead, because, as you know, we don't have a national election. We have 50 state elections, and you have to win X number of states to win the electoral college. Yeah, so I've sort of given you, more than you asked for. That's what Trump has to do. That's what Biden has to do. And who does the better job? We'll find out as these days unfold.
Yeah, that's true. We'll find out. Yeah, it's definitely, look, we all were there for 2016. It's tough to trust the polls. It's tough to look at the polls and go, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen. I'll never make that mistake again in my life, to be honest with you. Right? It's like, it's up in the air. I mean, literally, I have no idea. I want to keep it that way. I don't know. I'm curious about this. Do you think that if the pandemic, COVID-19 had not happened, do you think Trump would be in a much better position, like flying through this, like no problem? I'm curious. I don't know.
Well, nobody other than
I guess it's hard to say, but
no, exactly. But that's okay. I enjoy the thought experiment.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than Ronald Reagan in 1984 or Nixon in 1972, huge landslides in the last 50 years. Nobody ever has it easy. We're a contentious country. We're a divided country, which, by the way, is fine. People feel this way. People feel that way. Nobody can ever unify, ever. No matter who wins on November 3rd, roughly half of America is going to be ecstatic. The other half of America is going to be miserable. No, and then it's how do we all cope and find some way to put on our pants and go to work in the morning? So this was going to be, I don't know, necessarily a close election, but it wasn't going to be necessarily a landslide no matter what. I'll just go back to 3-4 minutes ago that without COVID, the usual factor, the strongest factor would be the economy. The other factors would be, is your base still enthusiastic about you? And for President Trump, that's undeniably true. And so the reason why, with the economy, the economy is growing, is seeming to regain its footing. The Trump base remains as energized as it ever has been. So why isn't this just a slam dunk? And again, it's the COVID curveball. We are in a contentious time, and they're probably, to throw another complicating factor in, it's not that COVID did this to us, but I have a feeling other issues of race, issues of social strife. How exactly has that played out? Let's take a look at things that have accelerated to the point of actual rioting. Not like that's the only thing you pay attention to. There is activism, there is discord, there is passion, all kind. I mean, Black Lives Matter, sporting events. The culture seems wrapped up in all of this, and there are two things happening at the same time. The people who are on board for all these calls for social justice are totally energized and ready to vote for a guy who might bring about somewhat closer to that agenda. The extremes of that, the actual rioting, the scolding that we've received from pampered athletes telling us our country is a racist hellhole, there's a backlash to that. There are a lot of people who are saying, excuse me, I don't think so. And while, of course, every Black life matters, the activism, the pigs in blanket, fry 'em like bacon chant, that's not something we're going to let fly. And there are voters who will vote for Trump to offer up a rebuke of that. Now, which of those groups is bigger? We're about to find out. Because I don't know, sitting right here, I do not know.
Yeah, it's tough to say. When you're in Texas, it's a weird... It's like hard to get a good grasp of what's happening in the rest of the country, to be honest with you. I think it probably safe to say that no matter where you live, that may be the case. Now, you may think you have a grasp of, no, this is how it's actually happening. This is like, I was listening to Matthew McConaughey, for instance, on Joe Rogan yesterday. And he was talking about Austin a lot. And he was saying things about Austin that I just don't think are true. And like he said like, well, in Austin, it's so different than the rest of the country. We're not so divided here. One guy will have a Trump sign in his yard, and in the next yard, it's a Biden sign, and they're just talking, having a good time. I'm like, where are you at, Matthew? Because that is not happening in my neighborhood, right? Like, I'm just curious. I just think like some people get so disconnected from what's happening, right? And they may not have, or their empirical experience then becomes, well, this is the world.
Well, sure. Well, would it be your observation? Because it's funny because people talk about Texas like it's monolithic. Yeah. Hardly. I completely believe Texas remains a red state. Trump will totally win Texas. Cornyn will totally win. But I don't think Trump will beat Biden by the degree by the 9 points or so that he beat Hillary. I don't think Cornyn's going to win by 2, like in the Ted Cruz Beto thing, but it's not going to be 12 either. Texas, it depends on, people go, well, the politics of Texas depends on where you are. Yeah. I mean, if you're in some affluent DFW suburb like Allen or Frisco, oh, please, it's total Trump signs everywhere. Yeah. But if you're in Austin, if you're in downtown Houston, if you're in downtown Dallas, if you're in San Antonio, if you're in El Paso, there are profound areas of blue in our red state. So just so I understand, would you say when Matthew was talking about sort of the dichotomy of Austin, would it be your observation that while we may be a red state, Austin is a totally liberal city, or at least seems 90% liberal by your record? Yeah. I would agree. I would agree with you. I would totally agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is definitely more liberal here, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I've been here since 2014. I moved here, opened my food truck, right, get it going. Look, I never talked politics with anybody the first couple of years I was here. Liberal, conservative, Republican, Democrat, never comes up in a conversation. I'm just serving food. I'm working with you. Nothing literally till Trump became president. Then all of a sudden, everyone like put on a different coat and like it showed more about you or something. It was very strange. And that I felt a divide immediately between certain people, but at the same time, it's kind of not there as well. I don't know. Again, it just depends, right? It's just such a hard thing to put in a box. It's very hard for me to just say, well, this is how it is. And this is how this is.
I'll tell you what I think happened, and I'm going to go with this. What made 2016 different, and what makes us seem we've always been divided? We've never not been divided. Is this the worst it's ever been? Yeah, go back to the 1860s. Find that Civil War thing. We've been more divided than this.
That's true.
There's never been a time, even in the feel-good era of Eisenhower in the late 50s, there were still bitter divides. So just enough with this nonsense that, America used to be unified. We never have been. We never will be. And that's okay because it means diversity of viewpoint. But so what happened in 2016? The answer is the change became real. Really real. Reagan came along and was very definitive for conservative governance. The Obama presidency, which I opposed every day of, you have to, history will observe it was a very consequential presidency. What Barack Obama sought to do, he succeeded in doing. There is no doubt about it. And so we've had the pendulum, kind of swing. It'll swing left, it'll swing right. And over the course of a lifetime, and I've been around for, soon to be 63 years, seen a lot, and I'll see a lot more, I hope. But in 2016, for whatever reason, along came the most curious vehicle for the most conservative presidency in modern history. Reagan, from a conservative viewpoint, rescued us from a second term of Jimmy Carter. Trump rescued us from a Hillary presidency, and just from my conservative treehouse is a much bigger deal. And along comes the Trump presidency with its policies on borders, Supreme Court, taxes, the environment, 10 other things I could mention that are absolutely the most conservative things to come down the pike in generations. The change is real. And this means two things. The people on board for the change are thrilled. How is anybody foggy? How can conservatives like Trump in view of bliggy, bliggy, bliggy? Because none of that crap crap matters what he was doing 30 years ago, or whether they like the tweets. None of that matters. Results are what matter. And even evangelical Christians, why do they love him? Because he's fighting for the religious freedom that we crave, because he's blasting through the political correctness, which is enemy number one. Now, flip side of that coin, the liberal America, the American left, the change is real as they see it as well. And it's a wholesale change away from a ton of things they thought were going pretty well. We had 2 terms of Obama, even during, God bless the Bushes, even during that presidency, we not like that was the most conservative thing to ever happen. So when the change is real, 2 things are going to happen. The people on board for that change are going to be thrilled. The people who oppose that change are going to be very fired up to retake the wheel. And so 2 of those things are happening. That's what this election's all about. And so that's why everybody just is so amped up and hyped up, because it's not just another Democrat presidency, another Republican presidency. Oh, well, just slightly different flavors of the same tune. Oh, no, the change is real. And that means that the differences are far more stark.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good explanation of it from both sides, honestly. Yeah, that's exactly it. Someone that was not political before that happened. It's been an interesting 4 years for myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm honestly ready to get back to how it was before, where I just every once in a while saw something or whatever. I'm just more of a creative, artistic person. I like dealing with that stuff more. My family, my wife, my dogs, I don't know. I enjoy those things in my life. Not to say that, right. My civic duties aren't important and whatever. I think those duties are more important than my political duties, because I separate politics and civics. So I realize it's my duty to go vote and pay attention to a few things, but gosh, I'm so ready to just not think about this all the time.
I got good news and bad news. The good news, and I mean that somewhat tongue in cheek, except we'll follow along here. Yeah. The good news is, no matter what's going on, that list of things that you mentioned about your work, your creative flow, your dogs, your family, the world doesn't dictate how you get to pay attention to that. Yeah, you can pay attention to that if the world is on fire outside your door, figuratively, if not literally. You still get to pay attention to what you want to pay attention to. And I talk about this a lot, is people go, I'm so dispirited by this, or I'm so beaten down by that, or my family hates me on Facebook. Well, do what you got to do. Surround yourself with people who are willing to overlook political differences and maintain friendships and maintain family. And so the good news is that is something that is more under our control than people might think. Now, here comes the tricky news. If you think the Biden win results in everybody calming down, guess again. Because everything, go back, rewind 3 minutes. Everything I said will still be true. If Trump wins, here comes 4 more years of that, and half of America is going to be liquored up and pissed off and red. I mean that figuratively. Yeah, are going to be. They're going to be. Their heads are going to be exploding. And if Biden wins, oh my Lord! I know the Biden commercials are, we need to pull together, and there's no red states and blue states. Dream on, Joe. Yes, there are. And if Biden wins, he very properly will roll out an agenda involving taxes and environmental policy and Supreme Court nominations that are going to drive me insane. And that's the music of democracy. That's the sound of American debate. So the notion that, and I don't know how we ever, get back to calmer, more sanguine time. Maybe we'll all just get tired of the temperature, or maybe if, let's say, there is a second Trump term. Okay, two ways to do it. A second Trump term after 8 years of Trump, it's like, okay, I guess this is what the country wanted. Maybe we don't want the Green New Deal. Maybe there are things we can do to expand some subsidies for solar and wind, but maybe the full-on Green New Deal, that's ain't going to happen. Maybe we don't want to return to the Paris Climate Accords. Maybe we don't want, et cetera, et cetera. And we end up with a Democrat Party that looked more like what it looked like under JFK. However, if Biden wins, and then you get President Kamala Harris, or we get a couple of Democrat presidencies in a row, maybe it'll be the conservative job to go, okay, I guess that's the flavor some folks wanted. And maybe our best job is to be a backstop against the most extreme things. Maybe Obama and then Trump was maybe the most sharp, the broadest swing of the pendulum that we've ever had. President Obama is surely one of our most liberal presidents. I've already described Trump as one of our most conservative. So it's like a head-snapping change of direction. Maybe after that pendulum starts to calm down a little bit, not that everything is going to be centrist or down the middle, but maybe the temperature will go down if the next couple of 2 or 3 elections reveal that we seem to be going in one way and not the other.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What do you think about Trump being a conservative? Does that strike you as odd? Have you been conservative Republican your whole life?
Oh, well, ever since I've been old enough to pay attention, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is why in 2016, well, obviously he'd been putting his toe in the political pool for a good long while. And if you'd asked me about Trump in 2012 or 2013, I'd have said, well, he certainly says some things that resonate conservatively. Business-wise, he certainly has some appeal. But I certainly didn't view him as a big pro-lifer, and it was an incomplete picture. Then he comes down the escalator at Trump Tower in 2015 and begins to run a campaign that looks completely Reagan-esque, that strikes every note, most notes that a conservative might want on borders, on taxes, on 100 other things. So then it became a matter of, do we believe him? Are we taking him in his word? I didn't think he was a liar. I didn't think he was hosing us. So during the 2016 primary campaign, when my first choice was Ted Cruz, because boy, there ain't no doubting that conservatism, right? Everybody would say, "Oh, Trump's phony. There's no way that he's a conservative. And I said, what evidence is there of that? And then people said, oh, he can't win. There's no way. Well, he's packing 16,000 people in the American Airlines Center. So even while I remained a Cruz guy, I kept beating down these Trump naysayers. Of course he can win if he's the nominee. And he seems to be a believable convert to conservatism. Conservatives are funny. Republicans are funny, and my callers are funny. That if somebody hasn't felt this way since the womb, it's like, whoa, we're very suspicious. Whereas I take a very different view. If I find somebody who used to be pro-choice and now they become pro-life, I have 2 words to say to them: thank you. Because it's like, from a conservative perspective, they have they've found clarity. So if President Trump, if conservative things began to resonate with him, and I think it's hard to fake this. I think it's very hard. I think it's hard to fake genuine conservatism or liberalism. Sooner or later, if you really are, scamming people, they're going to know. He developed credibility. So on that evening in early May of 2016, when the Indiana primary results came in, and the only 2 people left in the race were Trump and Cruz, and Trump beat Senator Cruz, and Cruz had to withdraw. The amount of time it took me to pivot to candidate Donald Trump was about a millisecond, and I have not been disappointed since.
Oh, it's interesting. So, what I found fascinating is that so many people, I guess this is politics, I'm assuming. I just found so many people were against Trump when he was running to be the nominee back in 2016. There's quotes from all kinds of Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, just all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it began, oh no, he's our hero. Is that, excuse me, I guess that's just politics. You sort of let somebody say all these horrible things about you, say horrible things about them, which is what I feel is how they really, truly feel. So then when I see them go, well, actually, he's a great guy. I love him to death. It's like, wait a second. I'm just a normal American. So I'm just thinking, wait a second. That's right. Like that seems odd to me.
It may be the reverse, however. The tension and the bricks thrown back and forth are a product of the political battle. You had 17 Republicans running for president who agree. By definition, they agree on most things. But if, let's say, you and I are 2 of them, let's say we're the last 2 left and we're in the same party, we agree on most things, I can't focus on that. I got to focus on the differences we have. And by the way, you're a bum, and you've got to say, well, but you're wrong about this, and you're a terrible person. So, and that's what makes everybody so weary, and the fatigue sets in with the negative ads. And boy, in this home stretch now, you can't watch TV without "my opponent is a nasty communist devil worshiper." I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Don't you just really kind of disagree on the issues? Yeah, but who listens to that? So that's what the primaries are. It will always be, once the primaries are over, kumbaya, all is forgiven, everything's fine, he's swell. After something as contentious as the Republican primaries in 2016, people still can't believe that Ted Cruz can stand the sight of President Trump. Trump was talking about stuff about his dad, stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The unflattering thing about his wife. Are you kidding me? But
Ted Cruz is a Texan. I'm like, dude, you're a Texan, bro. You need to stand up for your family, yourself. What are you doing?
So what is the explanation of? The explanation of it is it's just Trump. There's a 9-year-old in there that has a phone, and there's part of your Twitter feed. And it's like, okay, but is that the guy you're going to deal with every day as president? And is the far more important thing the results that we're trying to achieve? And the answer to that is yes. Now, a final addendum to the notion of people who didn't like Trump then and still don't, supposedly in Republican land. Remember when I said the change is real? The change was not just conservative progress against a liberal agenda. It was the old way of being a Republican. The go along, get along. We got to make sure we're still getting into Georgetown cocktail parties. We got to make sure the media don't dislike us. Anytime the media culture came after a Republican, for decades, the usual reply was, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" Or just not really to engage. Well, like it or don't, Trump engages. My Lord, the fighting spirit in this man, blasting through the people who come at him. He fights and he fights back. This is a whole new way of being a conservative, a whole new way of selling conservatism, a whole new way of being a Republican. And the Republican voter base, vast majority of it, loves it. Old, dyed-in-the-wool establishment Republicans hate it because it identified them as kind of a weak Casper milquetoast way of governing. There's a new sheriff in town, and it has and the people respected conservatives like Bill Kristol and George Will, who have been favoring things in the Trump agenda forever, but now they hate his guts. Why? Because he's just too abrasive. There's just something, and also Bill Kristol is kind of a moderate to even liberal on borders, so the tough immigration policies left him cold. For George Will, George Will is a patrician, and I love George Will, or I have, is a patrician establishment country club kind of guy for whom the Trump approach is just kryptonite. So even though the agenda is shared, the tactics and the flavor and the style, and that's what this whole never Trump cult is about. These people just hate his guts because he has shown a light on how ineffective their flavor of leadership has been.
So you think that Trump, gosh, how to say it. So you think it's more just the way he does it, not really just what he's saying, right? So you're saying it's that, and you think that's the new way of being a conservative and Republican. And so do you like this new approach of, or do you think it's just that he the way he talks about liberals so much, right? Like it's like anti-liberal as opposed to pro-conservative. Does that make sense? Like he's so right.
It's funny is that it depends on what you hear. Because life is long, the days are long. His presidency has been long, too long for some, not long enough for others. But does he speak out against the leftist agenda? Absolutely. But does he speak out in favor of conservative things? He's in favor of protecting the unborn, in favor of strong borders, in favor of backing law enforcement, in favor of environmental sanity, in favor of, it is not in any way purely a negative beatdown message. If it's and I don't mean this if it's your message, it might seem that way. It's like, wow, you're coming after me all the time. But it's funny. I mean, flip the coin. I perceive the Biden campaign as having been very negative toward a lot of things that I believe. But guess what? That's kind of the way it works. Because if I'm running against you, I got two jobs. Tell everybody why my views are great and yours are not. And your job is to describe why your views have merit and mine don't. In other words, positivity and uplift toward your side while coming at my side. That's all thoroughly natural. Now, the difference has been, I mean, if you go back to the George W. Bush campaign, the Bob Dole campaign against Clinton in 1996, to use it, one successful example, one unsuccessful example, in no way did we have the kind of sharp elbows, the kind of volume, and part of that's Twitter, social media. Can you imagine social media if we had it in the 60s or something like that? Ugh. So this is unprecedented, no doubt about it. Is that the forever new way to be conservative? Is this going to be the flavor of discourse forever? Not necessarily, and I don't know if I want it to be. People call me a lot over the last 4 years, and they say, Mark, I agree with everything Trump does. If you give me a list of his achievements, I support absolutely every single one of them. But the tweets make me a little crazy. Some of the stuff he said about McCain, or some of the things in the heat of a battle, he'll be a little petty, a little small, and I hate that. I wish I could have all the positives and none of the negatives. Okay, I don't know if that person exists. It may be that the buzzsaw, the effectiveness, all those positives, the energy and strength that he has displayed in doing the things that people like, it may simply be that means he's going to be really aggressive in other ways, and sometimes in some unseemly ways. I don't know if someone exists who can provide all those results and yet be better mannered or more intellectual. If so, great. Maybe we'll meet that person in the election of 2024 after the second Trump term. But if not, let's say that's just not possible. I've spent a lot of time telling people if they're conflicted in that way, I ask them. I say, have you been a fan of everything that he's done? Are there things that and yes, 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 and yes, if the caller is conservative. Then take everything that has driven you a little crazy and take comfort in the fact that it simply does not matter. Did people continue to support Bill Clinton? Good Lord, even after incredible transgressions in the White House? Of course they did. And that wasn't a mystery to me because they liked what he was doing as president. And that doesn't mean that we're all blind to what you call issues of character. But the most important things will always be what and they should be presidential character. The best sign of presidential character is telling the voters the things you're going to do and then doing them. If you display that DNA of presidential character, other things, the occasional goofy tweet, the occasional offhand comment, the occasional even unkind moment might not be your favorite thing, but it is a fool's errand to get caught up in that.
Oof. Well, I run a lot of fool's errand, that's for sure.
No, part of it's human nature. Part of it's human nature. But I really listen. It's funny if somebody is against the president, and then it kind of is like icing on top of the cake. I don't agree with anything that he's doing, and by the way, he seems to be a jerk. I totally get that, and there will always be a part. I'm talking really about people who favor him. They love the agenda, but they're conflicted by this other stuff. For sure, I know a lot of people like that. Get over it. It doesn't matter. However, a bit of again, it's the agenda that matters. But another bit of human nature is if you take a politician who has some personal quirks, maybe even some personal problems, the people who support that politician will always be in the mood to overlook those things. And the people who don't support that politician will always be in the mood to weaponize those things. And that's true. That'll always be true, traveling in both directions.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I would definitely agree with that. I do find it funny is, again, I'm not really a political person, but I just find it funny. A lot of stuff, again, whether or not you like Trump or dislike Trump, wherever you stand, he does say a lot of funny shit to me. It's just funny. It's just really funny shit. Last night he said, he just says stuff that I'm just like, what? So last night he said, I mean, amongst multiple things, I just found it funny. He was like, I'm the least racist person in this room. Every time he says something like that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what? Don't say that. That doesn't, it just, he cracks me up. I think he just says so many things that are, I'm the best. This is the greatest, right? I find that stuff so funny to me. He sells. I mean, I get it. I know where he comes from.
That's exactly it. You just answered. You just exactly described it, because as if someone watches, if an alien lands from space and sees the debate last night and says it simply is not mathematically possible that he knows that he's the least racist person in the world or in the room, and why would he even say that? It is branding. It is messaging. He could have said it would have been all right using Earth logic and a sentence that I might have written. It would have gone like, look, people have been trying to brand me as a racist since the day I came down the escalator in 2015. It simply isn't true. My policies and my personal interactions prove it. And I would offer
absolutely.
that. So, but
that's
what fun is that? What fun is that? Is I'm the least racist person in the room. It just
cracks me up.
We're getting trolled, and the base loves it. The supporters love it. The other it is part of the entertainment value. No,
I get it. I get it. Look, I got a lot of friends that like Trump. They support him. It's no problem. We talk every week, and I don't support him, right? It's no problem. I'm not one of those people that has eliminated Trump supporters from my life. Okay, I'm not that liberal. I'm not that liberal. But there's also conservatives that do the same thing. They eliminate liberals from their life for the same reason. I'm just not for that. Right. I'm not for either.
Real quick fine tuning. You said I'm not that liberal. It's not about your degree of liberalism. It's about your degree of decency. You could be the most diehard hardcore socialist, but if you still have it in your heart to welcome people with a different view, that just makes you a good person. Because it's not a continuum that says, okay, I'm going to be this conservative or this liberal, this conservative or this liberal, but if I get to this conservative and this liberal, I gotta disown my family. No. There's no.
I think that came out wrong when I said it. I was saying I'm not that kind of liberal. I'm sorry.
That wired, that devoted with tunnel vision only to the political. I just 60-second story. This is the way I try to live my life, both on the show. Love welcoming people who disagree. It's the most fun I have.
Me too.
Life. I have a lot of friends who disagree with me about everything, and yet I could fill many shows with people who will call me and tell me that their friends and even family simply can't abide the fact that they are Trump supporters. Now, in the Obama era, did I hear some of that as well? I did. I'm aware of some of it, and I scolded people against it. I don't know if it's apples to apples. I don't know. But I will tell you that I've just got one example in which it happened to me. And I will never name names. I've told the story and I'll never share. It's somebody who I've known. It's a professional, it's a friendship that had its root in a professional association. It wasn't like somebody who lived down the street or somebody who, et cetera, who I knew from from some social circuit. It was somebody I knew because I was in this business. But we had been so friendly and pleasant and spent so much time together in a professional setting, we developed a really serious fondness for each other. Me for him and his family, him for me and mine. I mean, one of the most kind, considerate, giving of spirit, and that all went away. It's funny. It didn't go away in 2016. Went away this year, where my capacity for believing the things I believe simply became a bridge too far. And I was informed of it quite publicly. And it's funny, I didn't, run home sobbing, but it's extremely sad. And I didn't, when I told the story on the show, and as I tell it to you now, I mean, the loss to me, it's a terrible thing to lose a friend. I hate that.
Of
The people who are in our lives, especially despite that can make life more fun, mixing it up with people and still maintaining certain decency. But it's sad to be that person, to view people. You've displayed a capacity for associating with, befriending, valuing somebody with completely different views. When you lose that, when all of a sudden the most important thing is who you voted for, and I'll tell you why it is. Now, let's say that you had a friend who, now here's something to break up a friendship over. That friend joins the Klan. That friend becomes a neo-Nazi. That friend joins the Communist Party. That friend begins spouting things that are literally hateful, literally horrible toward people. That's a friend I'm going to distance from.
I would actually become closer to that friend.
Well, in an attempt to retrieve, or in an attempt,
yes, to be an example, or to still be around them. Maybe they're just going through something that they'll then turn around.
Listen, yours is the better. You've analyzed it more closely even than I am. I'm just giving a kind of a.
But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
But here's the thing. Here's where this went south. For some, and this may be true of people listening right now. As soon as I say I'm a conservative and a Trump supporter, instantly I am that racist. I am that Klansman. I am that neo-Nazi. The conflation is instantly made, and wow,
and I don't agree with that.
That's not a way to live. That's not a way to live.
I agree.
So anyway, but so it's going to be an interesting Thanksgiving. It's going to be a real, and listen, the election may not be settled by Thanksgiving, and this may be overstated.
Oh God, let's hope so.
Oh, I know. I couldn't take that. It's funny. I said this. Just let it be a landslide one way or the other. If I'm going to lose,
that's a good point.
Give Biden 40 states so that I don't. If I know I'm going to lose, let me go ahead and lose. Because if it is, and because of all this infernal mail-in voting and ballot battles that we're going to have, and all of this, if Pennsylvania hasn't come in firmly, if Florida hasn't come in firmly, if Ohio hasn't come in firmly, no one may be at 270 electoral votes by the time we wake up on November 4th. So at that point, the rodeo is on. Oof.
That's it. Rodeo is on. Well, Mark, that's a great way to finish this off here. I just can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you coming on and us having this dialogue. It's been absolutely fascinating. Just to quickly respond to something you said, it's actually my favorite part of doing this podcast is talking to people who think differently than me. I look forward to it. In fact, it's my favorite conversations. Anyone that knows me will tell you that. I hate actually talking to people that are just going to say the same thing as me and we agree. And we're like, this and that. And I'm like, no. I want to hear something different that I might learn something from. It might enforce something I believe, or make me think about something that I didn't think about before. Take a different angle, different perspective about a particular topic. And, you never know. So I think it's important to hear people out. And I think that's what we're missing most. I hope we can get back to that. We can listen to each other. The idea that as soon as you mention you're a Trump supporter and you're conservative, you're right. People turn off from that, and that's wrong. They shouldn't. And the same thing goes if I say I'm a liberal and a Democrat, boom, some people are going to turn off, and that shouldn't be that way. We should be able to sit down and have a conversation, because you made a great point throughout this. You've made this great point throughout the whole episode, which is, we're always going to be divided in a sense, right? We're always going to think differently. Sure. We got to find a way to live like that. And that's it. And there's nothing wrong with people thinking differently than you. They're not evil. They just think differently than you. It's like, it's great.
Always going to be the case. We will never unify ideologically. So let's unify as people. There will 100%. Sometimes be no chance of common ground in terms of our opinions, but there is always common ground in our humanity. Let us value each other, love each other. When I, run across somebody and I learn liberal, Biden voter, blah, 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 the first thing that occurs to me is, let's get a shiner. Let's have some fun.
Love it. I love that attitude, Mark. That's so awesome. I love that so much. I'm actually talking to Rick Kennedy after this, who is running against Pete Sessions. I had Pete Sessions on earlier. So now I'm going to do the other side, right? I was like, hey, because Pete was like, you're only going to talk to Ray. No, Pete, look, I'm you're the first one. I'm talking to you first. I'm all about, I'm all about it, man. I just love that attitude. I hope we can all take that forward. So again, Mark, I really appreciate. Oh, before we go, I know we kind of covered in the beginning, but just tell everyone how they can stay connected with you.
Oh, sure.
Social media, all that sort of good stuff.
Okay, here we go. The best bet is Twitter at Mark Davis. I don't know how I got that. I got the same name as the owner of the Raiders with the weird haircut. I mean, there are a few other people who have probably done more in life than I have, but I guess I was there firstest with the mostest. The best thing for the radio show is right here. Look at there, and it's on the wall behind me. 6:60 a.m. theanswer.com. We also have an app by that name where you can listen to the show live or get the podcast. There you go of prior shows, and that's probably the best thing. I don't know. There's a Mark Davis Show Facebook page. There's a Mark Davis Fans Facebook page that I have nothing to do with, but that's always entertaining. People who love me and people who don't, they hang out there, and I always welcome both. So there you go. Just Google me. I'll wind up somewhere. Twitter at Mark Davis is probably the best way to do it. And I'm so grateful to you for being able to be here and do something this freewheeling and the kind of welcoming spirit you have. I deeply appreciate it. I did my homework. I went back and saw the stuff you did with Connie Burton, Dale Hansen, Clay Walker, just the various things. Just a wonderful environment, because if there's anything the world needs, it is more of this. So God bless you, and I appreciate you.
Wow, that's awesome, Mark. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you, to be honest with you. So my best to you and your family. I hope everyone stays safe and does everything that they need to do. And yeah, just wish you guys all the best. And I wish you the best with your show and everything coming up.
Thanks so much.
Thanks again, Mark. We'll talk soon, brother.
All right, man. Well, that was, man, what, dude?
How long do we go?
You know what the best compliment is? Dude, that was an hour and 50. It was an hour and 20. If it was not, that flew by. So,
I could have continued asking you stuff. It's so fascinating talking to you.
Let's pick up from once you get through everybody else and you're just desperate for guests in the middle of next year or something. Not that you would be, but I'd be more than happy, because Lord knows whatever happens, we'll have stuff to talk about. Deeply appreciate it, and just thanks for being the kind of person you are and doing the kind of show you're doing. Just loved it. Just absolutely loved it.
Thank you, Mark. Again, I really appreciate that.
Thank all your the very nice lady who got a hold of me. Everybody's been so kind. You've got a good operation working with you too. I appreciate that, Mark. That means a lot, brother. Have a good one.
Boss.
Stay safe.
Hey, you too, boss. Enjoy your weekend.
God bless. Thanks.
All right, brother. Bye-bye.
The Lone Star Plate podcast is produced by Texas Real Food. Go to texasrealfood.com and you can search your city for stores, butchers, restaurants, farmers markets, and more who are using fresh, artisanal, organic sources. It's a fun site that brings all natural options all together. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For more information, go to thelonestarplate.com. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Until next time.